Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Life Stories. Today on the show, we have a very special guest with us, Jerry Mannikarote. Dr. Jerry Mannikarote is an executive healthcare sales and marketing leader. Jerry is the president of the Texas Society of Sleep Professionals and VP of Business Development at Medigy LLC. Jerry has been in healthcare for over 2 decades. It's the unique experience of having worked in the clinical, manufacturing, OEM, and distribution sides of the industry. He's held multiple roles in various organizations and worked all across the United States. He has also spoken at various conferences across the United States, and outside of his regular work, Jerry loves fitness, martial arts, and music. So, Jerry, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you so much, Jesus. It's an honor to be here. I sincerely appreciate you inviting me, so I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited too. So, Jerry, tell us a bit about your leadership story since it started to where you are today.
Sure. You know, it it's funny because if you want to really dig into it, it could be from childhood. My I was the eldest of three boys in our house, so a lot of responsibility was put on me, and I kind of assumed that role early on. And however, both my parents were leaders on their own, and that kind of influenced all of us. And there was always a power struggle between us brothers, even though I was
Yeah.
the eldest. You could imagine that, and which led to physical struggles. And with boys in the house, you can imagine that as well. But growing up as a child, I was kind of somehow or the other thrust into certain roles where you kind of assumed a leadership position. But I kind of began to understand, hey, this is something that I enjoy, something I like doing because more than leadership is more than just giving orders, shouting orders. So when I became a physician, in India. I went to med school in India and became a physician. I was in charge of certain groups of people. So I began to read a lot more and started understanding management and leadership, started my own business. And then when I returned to the United States, I started at the lowest totem pole, lowest part of the totem pole. And I was in the process of getting my license. I became a sleep technologist and ended up within sleep technology starting the sleep center for a premier medical school here in Houston, Texas. I also ran and managed that sleep center along with the clinic, the sleep and pulmonary clinic, which again was I was forced to learn and learn on the fly, as well as improve my and hone my leadership skills. And then I was recruited into sales and marketing. There, I had an extremely good boss and a really good mentor, and both have become my friends, which and they really pushed me to become the leader that they saw in me. And my boss at the time, I remember I barely started in the job, and we happened to be in a different city, and he said he wanted to meet with me one on one and talk about my future. And he said, "I think you're destined beyond sales, and you need to I want you to start focusing on this, start reading more books, start actively managing your own accounts as if you owned them, and not just to call on these accounts as a salesperson, and I want you to move in that direction." And he really pushed me towards that. And here I am today at the organization that I'm with as a vice president, which again, along the way, you learn so much, and you learn very well that leadership is not about barking orders. It's not just about delegation. It's not just about talking to a person. It's not about coaching. It's a conglomerate of all of these things put together and shaping who you are, but shaping and influencing others.
I love that final part, leadership is about influencing, it's not just authority. And yeah, it's awesome to hear, how you got to, where you are today and how you got to learn all those things. And you also mentioned some important role models that helped you that push you through and push you forward in your career and helps you understand, what you're called to, or what would be you know, your best area of success. So would you have any particular anecdotes or stories with those people, particular things that, you know, they put you somewhere in your mind and, which, helped you grow, helped you understand how leadership is and how to get there?
If anybody, if anybody had told me that they did all this on their own, I would find it very hard to believe. And there has to be somebody to help you. And one of the biggest pieces for me was a friend of mine, and he took me to lunch when I was running the sleep center and the sleep clinic. When I was running that, he took me to lunch, and he is a prominent physician here in Houston, Texas. He's very well known, and Dr. Phil Alapat. He took me to lunch one day, and he kind of asked me what my future is and what do I want to do. And I was telling him about, hey, I'm going to be preparing and getting my license, and I want to become a doctor, and because I was a doctor in India, I wanted to start seeing patients here. Then he said, well, he planted that seed in my mind. He said, Jerry, you have all these talents and you're doing so well. Have you considered pursuing this role and pursuing this position and moving in this direction? Because you're leading this team. You grew this center from nothing to where it is now. We were one of the few centers across the United States that was accredited in less than a year. And the site visitor, by the way, said it was he would put us in the top 5% of the country. So this friend of mine, Phil, was like, why are you looking at going backwards? And I'm thinking, getting my license, I'm going forwards, but he's said, no, this is going backwards. You need to think about this piece. And that's how I began to look at sales. So that was one big piece there. Then I told you about my boss, my manager. He was an amazing leader. He's still an amazing leader. He's a friend of mine, Ben Kitchen. He said early on, and I don't know what he saw in me, but I'm very grateful for that. He put me on the track towards good time management, and where I was struggling, he was a man that I could go to and say, "Hey, I have these issues, and can you help me find a solution?" And the great thing about him is that he didn't just hand you an answer right there. He would push you to find it. And he said, I can give you some pieces here. I need you to figure this out afterwards. And amazing guy. And I told you, he had that conversation with me one evening, and we sat down together, and he said, what are your aspirations? What is this? What is that? And he helped me define my path. And he really said, I think you're destined for more than just sales. I want you to start looking in a different direction. He pushed me to get my MBA, and the organization paid for it, and he approved it. But he really pushed me towards that and said, "You need to do this. You need to move forward, Jerry. You cannot stay here. As much as I want to keep you on my team because you've done so well and you've done so well for us, I do not want to hold you back." To me, that was exemplary leadership. I learned so much from him. I will also say this, which is not, it may not be conventional, but I've had some really poor leaders that I had to work for, and I also learned how not to act. For example, there was one organization I worked for a very tiny, short period of time, and they went by what they heard about me, and I chose to leave that organization. But that's when I learned a lot about data gathering. You cannot put your opinions and feelings in place during the time of decision making. Whether it's a tough decision like, do you want to separate a person from the organization, or a business decision? Do we go in this direction for the organization, or do we work with these customers? You have to go with data. You have to go with data. Yes, we're human beings. Opinions and feelings do color it, but we have to go with data. And so, yes, I've learned from these negative people as well.
Yeah,
Uh, there's one more person I do have to mention, and is from the last organization I worked with, the chief people officer, Joel Mills. He was my mentor for several months while I was over there. Such a busy man, would give me time on his schedule in the C-suite, and what he called it was intentional leadership. I had some leadership challenges which I had never faced before. I've never been able to read it in books, and I went to him, and he would give me a pathway to work on it, and he would follow up with me, and we would discuss my results and where I could tweak.
awesome. No, perfect. Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure they'll all hear this from you. So, and I want to, particularly focus on that part that you said about, using data to make important decisions. Um, so, what would you recommend to listeners that have to make decisions today, but they feel strongly about it and they have a particularly biased, I mean, they may not know it, but what do you recommend to people when they're making decisions to dissociate the data from their own feelings and their own thoughts about it?
So this is, you pose a very tough question, and I had to self-reflect to understand that as well. That I say these things, but I'm not immune to it, right?
Of course,
Um,
yeah, none of us are.
none of us are. One of the things you can do is actually a free test online, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but if
Well,
you go online, and I believe it's by Harvard, where you can you can do your unconscious bias. And when you do that, you will be very, very surprised at how much bias you have, and it's unconscious. And if you're able to do that and accept the results that, hey, there may be some things that I do have biases and I do have prejudices that I don't realize, that will open up your eyes and help you move forward. So that's one thing. The second thing is to be willing to listen to others. There's a lot of talk these days about diversity and inclusion, and to me, what diversity and inclusion means is, and by the way, I was the vice president in my last organization. I was the vice president of the Diversity and Inclusion Council, and um, it's not about checking a box and saying we have this many people from this demographic and this many people from this sexual orientation. It's not about that, at least to me. What it's about is bringing together people of different ideas and different thought processes and hearing their opinions, hearing their thoughts about a specific, about various subjects. Now, me as a leader, if I am trying to come to a decision and I have my own biases, I have to first recognize that. And secondly, is I have to talk to the trusted people within my circle and ask for their opinions as well. Now, if everybody thinks like me and it's not diverse, you're going to have a problem. You're not going to get the clear answer. Everything is going to be biased. But if it's a diverse group of people and you include, and that's the diversity inclusion, you include all of them in the conversation, you're going to be able to move away from your own personal bias and get better points of data throughout and then make a much better decision.
I totally agree with you. Putting different people or diverse people in your team, that is just the starting point. Then you need to include them, and that's the I of DEI, into your decision making, so you can actually have the mostly unbiased environment that you can have with to make decisions. So no, that's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you, Jerry, for that.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of lessons and a lot of anecdotes from your story. So how can people know more about yourself, about your work, about the associations and the companies you work with? Um, just tell us how they can reach out.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, uh, Dr. Gerald George Mannikarote. and there's my entire life history is on there, a career life history, let's put it that way. And you're always welcome to reach out to me on there. And once we connect, we can chat. And I I typically try to find time to take phone calls and such from people from others. I told you my one of my managers, Ben Kitchen, he put me on the path towards good time management. So I've been able to balance these things in between my schedules. That's where they can definitely learn a lot more about me, and probably the best place. I do have a podcast, and if you want to see me a little more in action, you're welcome to look at that. I will tell you though, it's very technical. It's on sleep, and specifically sleep technology, so it's extremely technical. And listening to it, you may put yourself to sleep. So that's that's a warning right there.
Which is the
But
intention, probably, right?
yeah, maybe. Yeah,
But no, but I think it's very important because and I know that this interview wasn't about sleep, but knowing that you're a sleep expert, and I'm very sure that, like me, there is a lot of our listeners that probably have issues with sleep or questions about it. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure, just listening to your podcast and maybe just sharing those questions with you and with your community, they will also be able to learn a lot about sleep. Um, and yeah, and get in
definitely.
contact with you that way.
Definitely, yeah, yes, there is. We actually do have a lot of content outside of just sleep technology. We do have true sleep questions, and we have a ton of guests that come on and speak to these points. So, yeah, most definitely.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, I really appreciate all the stories, the lessons, the anecdotes that you shared with us today. Thank you so much for being here. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thanks to everybody that's listening, and look forward to connecting.